we had indicated in our invitation that David would be talking to us about some of the grant work that Pennsylvania IPL has won, largely through, well, some through David's efforts as our executive director, but also Kathy Hrabowski, who's based out in Pittsburgh, was the primary grant writer for the grants that we received from DEP, Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. So she gets a lot of credit for our having gotten those several pieces of work. So David, I'm going to turn it over to you for an overview of the work that we're doing, and in particular, the work that will have an impact here in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia area.
Yeah, so thank you, Bill. I'll start off with Kathy's grants, actually, the 2 DEP grants. So there's 2 simultaneous grants. One is a single year grant, which is an environmental education grant. And the focus in that is on particular environmental justice communities to not only expose attendees directly to nature through hands-on workshops, urban farming, things like that, but also to, increase attendees' understanding of various strategies that can help protect the watershed, conserve energy, wastewater, things like that, and really encourage attendees to, in their personal lives, take specific actions which will reduce climate change in their immediate community. All of this is with the intent of it eventually leading to health benefits for that community. Thus, not having your basement flood and having more trees that are able to survive and having less water runoff and less pollution in the streets and things like that, as well as having, potentially raising some of your own fresh fruits and vegetables and having a rain barrel to be able to water that so it doesn't hike up your water bill at the same time, and mitigating the expenses and the expertise components of living a more sustainable and healthy lifestyle in an environmentally just way in communities that otherwise don't have direct workshops to assist them into doing that. And that is both in Southeast PA, particularly with FUMCOG, First United Methodist Church of Germantown, and then at Juniata Park Academy, which is in Juniata Park neighborhood, a extremely low income elementary school, the Philadelphia School District. I also have a pre-existing relationship with that school, and we were trying to get off the ground the Julia Morgan Fund grant with FUMCOG as well, whereby we would, and I did do some environmental education, and we're planting trees. We planted 15 trees this past season, and we'll probably plant more. We're also rejuvenating the raised beds. They have 9 raised beds that have basically left to be overgrown with weeds. So the desire was that through the trees, some of the very low level student education and the garden, to make those connections, to bring people in, to give them direct access to the fruits and vegetables that they could grow themselves, and then to layer that with some more intensive workshops for people who have the time and the interest to be able to attend them, and thus create a network in that neighborhood of multiple languages and races to connect with the school, and then also bring it out into the various faith communities that surround the school. There's about 12 to 15 congregations within the immediate vicinity of the school. FUMCOG is a long-term partner with us. So they're doing it largely through the congregation. With the congregation, they also have some potential for raised beds and rain barrels and things like that. I'll pause there for a second just to see if there's any immediate questions on any of that. They also don't need to only be those places, those were just the ones that we explicitly wrote into the grant. We had also hoped for a third partner at Chester Eastside, but that didn't materialize because of internal shifts that took place during the grant period. But we are more than happy to pull in additional partners if there was interest from other congregations or communities in the, not just Philadelphia, but like the Southeast Pennsylvania kind of region.
Would the intent be to find another school, or?
I'd be open to that. I mean, the one that I've been thinking about more and more, because I have a connection there, is Thomas Aquinas in South Philly. So my house in South Philly is down the street from it, and my neighbor is like a church lady. She is very well integrated into the community there. They also have a school. It's also a very diverse, multilingual community. They don't have a whole lot of land, is the only problem, nor does anybody in South Philly. But water runoff, things like that, planting trees either in your tree lawn or if you have a little space in your backyard, all of those things would be beneficial kind of workshops that we could offer. But yes, I mean, I'm open to every and any community that we could pull into that grant.
What is the time? You said this is a 1-year grant. So what is the time frame for if we were trying to identify another school or church community?
So it's through July 2023, because we only had it like executed as of July 2022. The other thing is that it has the potential to attain additional years. You can only secure 1 year at a time, but we have the first year. We could get the second year, and I think you can get up to a third year for that grant. So if we are successful in demonstrating that we are meeting the metrics, like having enough of these workshops, having people attend it, showing some impact in the community, it would be not unreasonable for us to get a second year. The second grant from the DEP that runs parallel to it, that we actually received earlier the announcement for, but only executed it almost the exact same time, is the Growing Greener grant. So that one is specifically for delivering watershed protection and water conservation education and outreach programming, designed and implemented statewide, though we do have 3 target areas, being Southeast PA again, Pittsburgh again, and then an additional kind of central PA corridor. So kind of like State College down to Harrisburg and Lancaster. This is meant to help with the improvement of the watershed quality, access to safe water for drinking and recreation through the reduction of stormwater flow, the rate of flow, and in order to comply with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA's Section 303D restoration prioritization strategy framework. They funded this so that we can assist them to achieve their goal in urban, suburban, and agricultural runoff, with a focus particularly on environmental justice communities in those areas. So areas that are along creek beds that are flooding, areas that have seen pollution really devastating either the soil retention and quality, the trees, or even the health and wellness of the people, are prioritized. But like our 3 specific regions are, like I said, like the greater Pittsburgh area, greater Philadelphia area, and this kind of broad corridor through the middle of Pennsylvania. That is a 3-year grant. So the first year is kind of listening sessions and presentations to hear from the people, to really understand like what's going on in their communities, where do they see flooding, when do they see flooding, are there other water quality issues, pollution issues that they're seeing palpably in their world. And then years 2 and 3 take those listening session and the data that we acquire from it, the connections that we make from it, to then launch a series of ongoing educational and workshop based programming for 2 years. Any questions about those?
For Southeast PA, has particular watersheds been identified, or?
So they had like a priority list. One was the Wissahickon Creek. I can't remember all of them, but this is also more Kathy's area of expertise. So I think even there are low income individuals and also not in Manayunk, but like obviously Manayunk at the bottom of the Wissahickon Creek and along the Schuylkill gets devastated by flooding on a pretty regular basis. So I think that could potentially be a community. I would also say that because they are geographically similar and even thematically similar, like Fumcog and Juniata Park and a bunch of other similar areas that we've already mentioned. Let me see. In Pittsburgh, we also have like Ballfield Farms, Garfield Farms, Valley View Presbyterian Church, and 2 other schools that we're working with in Pittsburgh. So we have a good lineup of people in Pittsburgh. If you have any specific connections, ideas, thoughts of where we could do this, it doesn't have to be schools either. I mean, like obviously our priority is communities of faith, but I think we can bring communities of faith to schools or to rec centers or other spaces if they can't house the presentations or organize them within the communities of faith themselves. To this end, we also got resources for, like, we have a giant projector screen, a projector, hotspots, laptops. We got things to like be able to do professional kind of level presentations. The last thing I'll say, and then turn it to Peter, was if any of you would like to participate in those presentations, also like Peter, if you wanted to like come to Fumcog and participate in those, we would love that. You know, like it's basically like a staff member, a board member, and we would love a IPL member to be kind of a trio to organize them together, like to actually do the presentations.
Sure, I'd be happy to. How big is the grant? How much do you have to work with?
So the 3-year Growing Greener grant is $145,000 over the 3 years. But there's specific pre-designated earmarked breakdowns of those funds. So like how much can go towards staff, how much can go towards supplies, how much can go towards travel, et cetera, et cetera. Within, I think it's a 5 or 10% margin of error. And we were trying to hire an individual in Philadelphia to house both the EP grants and an individual in Pittsburgh and an individual in Central PA. But that has proven more difficult than we had hoped, honestly. So at the moment, we don't have a new, distinctly different DEP person in Philadelphia. At the moment, I'm carrying some of it, Kathy's doing it remotely, organizing that, and then Ariel is supposed to do the actual in-person presentations. I may assist. I mean, Bill, Nathan, any of you can all assist, all of those types of things. But if we could find somebody that could carry that, it would be fantastic. To do not only the grassroots like outreach and stuff, but also to actually do the presentations. The other grant is $20,000 a year, by the way.
That's the 1-year grant?
Correct.
Are you working with Germantown Friends School at all about that?
We are not yet. Do you have a
Any
contact?
idea why, Bill?
Well, I mean, it wasn't identified as a priority location at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think also we were hoping to get things off the ground and then expand from there. And we've kind of kicked off recently. So that's why I'm presenting it to you guys, that like, if you have ideas like Germantown Friends School, then that's one that we could explore if you think that's a viable option.
I mean, there's a public school in Germantown that Germantown Friends Meeting and the school have been working with, and that's the John F. Kelly School, which is a K through 6, I think, these days, K through 5. But they have a fairly good sized piece of land, and their priority has been trying to upgrade their playground. And the meeting has made a pretty significant contribution for that playground upgrade. But they may also be interested in they have some raw land that they may be interested in a gardening program and some of the workshops that you're describing. So, I could follow up with you on that and put you in contact with the people at Kelly that have been doing some of that work.
Yeah,
So they'd appreciate that, Bill and David.
wonderful. Yeah, and I mean, I think that there's different angles for it. There's the one side is like environmental justice, lower income, frontline kind of communities. But then on the other hand, it's also like people who can go forth with this, who aren't necessarily low income as well, would also be able to benefit from this. Like FUMCOG, I think probably has like a variety of different people of different socioeconomic levels and so forth. So what I'm trying to say is it doesn't have to be exclusively just people who are on the lower socioeconomic scale. It also shouldn't be necessarily like the richest possible people either, but like it should try to get the community as it is represented in various faith communities or school communities. So then I mentioned the FUMCOG Julia Morgan Fund one. That is a combination of like the trees that we regularly plant in Philadelphia, which is an ongoing thing with Mark Smith, and the Germantown tree tenders. The other is the ongoing work at Juniata Park for that garden that I mentioned, which is kind of running parallel to the 2 DEP grants there. Really the hope is to expand the reach of PA IPL beyond like the Mount Airy, West Philadelphia and Western Suburbs corridor, and to bring in various other neighborhoods. And we've done work in North Philly, in the neighborhood over in Hunting Park and Esperanza and everything, and all of that relationship that we had pre-COVID. It is clearly integral to our mission to work with frontline communities. And if we have an ability to work within a school community and the surrounding faith communities, then we should. And it's a huge heat island. It is a very like awful warehouse, post-industrial space for the most part. The park is there, but like outside of the park, there are very few trees. And as I said, there's not a lot of income to go around to be investing in green infrastructure or anything else of that sort. I will say, in my experience teaching those kids, it was it's always eye-opening to see that they don't understand where like the apple comes from, that like the seeds that they see in the apple are the seeds that make the apple, and like how do you get from seed in apple to apple in your hand, let alone like they didn't realize that like apples don't like grow outside of Philadelphia and are just brought in, but like are shipped from other parts of the world. Like all of this, the infrastructure of food was unfamiliar to them, let alone even like why do we need trees for our air. Like they understood that trees are good, but that's kind of the limit of their understanding when it came to trees. And I was there on Earth Day and Arbor Day to like talk to them. I was like the Lorax. I was like speaking for the trees in that moment. And we had fun, like we made art. Actually, I have here somewhere a whole stack of thank you cards that they sent me, which were really very cute and heartfelt. But we made art, we dug holes, we put trees in, like we did a lot of fun things, and I felt like they really learned. We also laid out all of the recycling from that day on a giant mat, and we separated it by like what could actually be recycled in Philadelphia, what can't be recycled in Philadelphia, and what can't be recycled. And you could see like those three very distinct piles. And the only problem was that I pulled everything out of one trash can, meaning like they weren't really recycling. They were just throwing all the trash into one heap and expecting this to all somehow miraculously help the environment. So I think that's some of the stuff that these grants can help with, but like the more manpower, the more people who can help garden, the more people that can just be there with the kids, the better. Connecting with the families, connecting with the congregations, all of that stuff.
Are there Are there follow-up events planned either at Juniata Park or at FUMCOG this fall?
Yes, though I don't have the dates on the top of my head. There's one in FUMCOG coming up pretty soon, which will be broadcast online, with Kathy doing that one, and it'll be recorded and everything. The Juniata Park one, I believe there might be one on the 15th, and then subsequently in the weeks to come, there's like several coming up. So I can get you those dates. I will also say, like, if we had people to go start gardening now and preparing it for like a fall planting, because we're about to get into that like next season of like winter squash kind of stuff, we could do that right now. Like if I had people willing to go, I could get them the supplies, they could go, I could set up the time, they can go do it. So there's no obstacle to that. And what I love also is that when you're there and the kids see you in your garden, they come over and be like, what you planting? You know, like they were curious. They want to know, like, what's that thing? Like they've not seen a gourd before. They've not seen it like not chopped up or like not processed. And if they have, maybe not that gourd, like they're curious of like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it that way? What's that tool in your hand? Why do you, like, for the wooden sticks that went with the trees, with the shelters, they're like, what's this about? Like, you know, it's a lot of playfulness and fun. But again, I think what it comes down to for me is our staff capacity is limited, and the more that we can like reach out for volunteers or even paid, you know, like I said to Peter about DEP, like we have money to pay somebody, we can't get somebody to take the job. We've interviewed, we've offered, people keep taking other jobs and going elsewhere, and it's the hiring situation across all nonprofits right now is really hard. So any recommendations in that regard would be amazing. So those are the three like environmental education kind of ones. The other is more civic engagement and stuff related to policy. So I'll leave the policy one to the end because that's the one Haley's involved with. But the civic engagement one, Haley dropped in the chat several links for you. It's the IPL Faith Climate Justice Voter Campaign. So IPL National got a grant. They re-granted us Georgia, Michigan, and one other state money to do civic engagement. This primarily right now comes in one of three forms. First, voter registrations, which our method of voter registration is one of the hardest that you can do, which is going to congregations and getting voter registrations there. Most people for voter registrations, you know, stand on the street and harass people, go to college campuses, hit up a bunch of like high school students who just turned 18. We can do all of those things, but like we also want to do as much as we can to make this faith-based as possible. The second thing is the voter guide. So we have I think it's like 5 or 6 different topics in a voter guide. It's not like the League of Women Voters down ballot guide. It doesn't tell you who's running for office or even what offices are running. It's more like a magazine spread that talks about the environment, a magazine spread that talks about immigration. So it's just like a 2-page kind of thought guide, sounding board for yourself. It's not trying to tell you what to do. It's just saying like, if these are priorities for you, then you should vote your conscience. You should seek leaders who embody these principles in the world for you. So it's very much more a spiritual voting guide than it is a like down ballot guide. And we're supposed to distribute those to literally anyone, but again, as much as possible to faith communities. And then the last one in the immediate is the voter pledge. All of these are the immediate because of the obvious upcoming voter registration deadline and election. The idea there is people fill out like a postcard. I wish I'd grabbed them. I have them downstairs. But you can see them on the links as well. It's a postcard where you fill out your information and then essentially it gets mailed back to you prior to election day. So it's a reminder like, hey, you pledged that you were going to vote. Don't forget, election day is on the 8th. Get out, you know? And then also it allows us to text or call you, things like that, to follow up and say like, hey, did you remember to vote today? And then that's the last part, is we're actually doing a study about text messaging in which PA IPL is texting people, the Catholic Climate Covenant is texting people, and YECA, which is Young Evangelical Christians for Action or something like that. They are also texting. So 3 different faith groups all texting with similar messages to see how responsive faith voters might be. And then we also have a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a placebo, not a placebo, a control set, where we're not texting them anything related to like faith voting, but just texting them to see how much or less responsive people are when voting is coupled with faith and environmental messaging. The last thing for all of this is then this leader, captain, congregation captain thing. The idea being that, again, our staff capacity is limited. So like if we can get one person at a church to go in and say, I can register 10 people, that's 10 people, right? If we do that for 100 congregations, we've blown well past our metrics. Same thing for the voter guides. A faith captain says, yeah, I can distribute 100 of these, no problem. They just go into the congregation and hand them out as people are leaving. It's pretty simple for that. The biggest obstacle, the most difficult thing, is the voter registration. The other ones will probably take care of themselves, but we still do need people. If you are willing to be one of those captains and give it out, post it online, email people. And again, looking for employees. You know, we have somebody in Pittsburgh. We have Haley's counterpart, Emily, up in Scranton. We have somebody in Harrisburg. We don't have anybody in Philly. We did, and then she took a job elsewhere because she realized environmental was not where she wanted to put her effort.
Now, David, I've downloaded the voter guide, but do we have printed copies for distribution? If
we do. And every time that somebody downloads the voter guide, it also counts. So even if you just get people to download it, it counts towards our metric. But I have in Philadelphia a huge box or 2. I have here a box. Everybody has a box of these guides.
What are the metrics?
I don't remember for the voter guide. Let me check. Hold on. That's a good question. The metrics for voter registration was the upper side. We were hoping for 500. Lower side was 250.
Okay.
We're also supposed to try to get 20 new congregations or faith-based organizations involved in the campaign. We're working on that. We have a few already that have kind of like signed up in one way or another. 1,500 voter pledges, 10,000 voter guides digitally and in hard copy, but I don't know if that's just us or that's the entire campaign for that one.
Okay.
And then recruiting 20 congregational leaders is the hope.
Would you be able to, is that on a document that you could send me so I could share it with Emily?
Yeah, she should probably have it already, but I'll send it to you right
Okay.
now.
I know when we did our first tabling on campus during the involvement fair, we had some voter guides out and stuff like that, and we had a lot of students take them.
Okay.
I don't know if she counted, and she didn't say anything to me about deliverables, so like I wasn't.
I think for the voter guides, like I said, like we have the back end data for when everybody downloads them. So like IPL will see that. For the
Okay.
paper copies, essentially we know how many they sent us, and then we'll at the end count off how many we have left,
Okay.
and that's how we'll
Okay.
know. The other thing is that all 4 regions where we're like really concentrating our efforts have tablets where people can register people to vote directly on the tablet.
Okay.
The other thing is like, let's say Emily, who's doing this work in NEPA, had a synagogue where she could go do this work. Essentially, She recruits a faith captain. The faith captain says, come to our synagogue on this day. We're having an event. Emily shows up. The captain shows up. Together, they stand there and they talk to people. They hand out guides, pledges, etc. The other thing is if I saw Peter Winslow and I said, hey, are you registered to vote? He's like, of course I am, right? Like, there's a lot of us that are high propensity voters, but maybe Peter didn't fill out a voter pledge yet. And Peter, as a high propensity voter, is like, yeah, of course, I'm going to vote, but sure, here, I'll do it. It takes him like 10 seconds to write down his address and his name on this thing. And then the voter guide, he might be like, yeah, I'll take a look and I'll take one from you. So like, those are way lower lift. Whereas like registering somebody to vote, it has to be somebody who's not registered or who wants to change their voter registration.
Something that Emily and I were talking about when we were on campus, we had a lot of students that like we were asking, are you registered to vote and stuff like that? And they're like, I'm not a citizen.
That's another issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is convincing out-of-state people who have moved to Pennsylvania to register in Pennsylvania, particularly students.
Yeah.
Because after 30 days, you can claim residency. And if you moved for the fall semester, you will definitely have been here for 30 days or longer by the time the election comes around.
Exactly.
A lot of students don't know that. Or there's a lot of people that move houses, you know, like you're 24, you moved houses at 26, you forgot to re-register, but you have to register at your new location or you can't go vote.
Yeah.
Things like that. Any other questions on any of that?
Nope, I think I'm good.
And then the last one is the CAC, the Climate Action Campaign project that we're working with them on. And we've been doing this for months. So Haley up in NEPA is doing grassroots. So her thing is getting signatures on petitions, getting people to stand outside and do a honk and wave, getting people to do lobby visits to Matt Cartwright, people like a lot of like everyday people taking actions, writing letters, dropping them off, doing public visibility things, all of that. For Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, we have a very different metric. It is called grass tops actions. So it would be Peter contacts his local council member and says, can you tweet this? If they tweet this message out, then it counts. Patty says, can you call the EPA to her local state rep? And I want you to tell the EPA that we need stricter policies on this or that. And if that rep makes that phone call or sends that email, that counts. Other things would be like op-eds from grass tops. So anybody who is an educator, an elected official, a doctor, a scientist, somebody with a social media following, basically anybody that somebody would want to listen to, either because they have the authority, the education, or the skill. So like a pastor, a rabbi, an imam, all count. But essentially getting any of them to write op-eds, write letters to the editors, be interviewed on radio, podcast, TV, getting them to write letters to the EPA, to the White House, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So essentially getting leaders, grass tops, to do things. Most of this is really meant to not only push the administration, especially when it was Build Back Better and the Inflation Reduction Act, but also to control the narrative, right? To make sure that leaders are consistently speaking and turning that wheel of the urgency and the priority of environmental issues in our world and in your community. We've gotten Nikhil Saval, Sharif Street, Helen Gim, Richardson, a whole slew of other elected officials, but I would love to see more faith leaders. I would love to see more scientists, professors, like even like a school teacher writing about the closure of public schools due to extreme heat for the first 2 weeks. I wanted that to be an op-ed because like the Inquirer, the Billy Penns, everybody was picking up that story, but there weren't op-eds. They were the actual reporters picking up the story.
It's not that the op-eds weren't written and submitted, it's that they weren't being printed.
That's fair too.
Yes, the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition picked up on that issue very specifically with some really good op-eds that did not get picked up by the Inquirer.
Yeah. And I mean, just for our purposes, it needs to be grass tops. And as much as possible, we try to coordinate with the CAC communications team because they have particular ways that they would like to talk about things that they've kind of like tried and tested through polling and so forth. So again, like any contacts, any people that you think would be good grass tops that we could do. We've also done a bunch of rallies outside the EPA office, outside of City Hall, things like that. So the one that we keep lifting up is the Nikhil Saval housing bill that got passed, and then also the Helen Gim Community Health Act as local measures that are the first brick, but that we need those people when they're talking about that to also say, now Biden, now Congress, you need to take your stuff seriously. If we're doing this in Philly, you need to do this as a nation. So like that's kind of the messaging that we've been pushing as much as possible. The other one would be like site tours, like basically getting a congressman to come to a church to see a solar panel. If you get the press to come, then that counts. Or getting them to go see a pollution site and getting the press to show up when a council member goes and looks at like a horribly polluted area in the city. But it's basically using them as spokespeople as much as possible. Haley, on the other hand, and NEPA doesn't have any of that issue, but she just needs to keep bugging Matt Cartwright and, you know, engaging as many college students and community members as humanly possible. A big one also is the soot rule that's coming up, where it's just a petition. So all you need is for people to sign, you know. That's a pretty low lift.
That's an EPA rule on particulates, or
Yeah.
what is?
And we already did the good neighbor rule, which was the cross-state air pollution regulation, so that like Ohio and Kentucky can't have terrible regulations that then they just let the pollution blow into Pennsylvania and Maryland and north and east of them. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just opening the metrics for that. And so far we've been doing pretty well year to date with the CAC work, but again, having somebody in Philadelphia that's not me would be helpful. And also somebody that's dedicated to this, like this is what they're doing. Like Haley is in NEPA, we need that person in Philadelphia. And also volunteers. I mean, the more volunteers to show up and hold signs or email and text your council member and your state rep or whatever, like it all helps, you know, to make those connections, to get them to take action. Yeah, so right now the things that we're actually doing the worst on are non-opinion clips and opinion clips. So that would be like being interviewed or doing an op-ed in the LTE for grass tops in Philadelphia or Pittsburgh. The other one is grassroots contacts, but I think that's partially because Scranton didn't have any students all summer and we were waiting for them to get back. Now they are, so.
Yeah, and even with being on campus, like it's a little iffy, but Emily and I are still trying. And I've been noticing, I was actually going to send you screenshots of things I've seen on Facebook. A lot of people in this area are just not for different things that are happening to try and improve the environment. So
Yeah.
like that's another issue that we're facing too.
Yeah, I mean, I think also, like I said before, like maybe going door to door might be helpful. It's a very labor intensive, time intensive way of doing it, but like spending an hour or two every week just knocking on doors, and anybody that you have an extended conversation with, getting them to sign the petition or sign up in some way counts. So the overall objective is to not only get PA IPL to be like a household name for grass tops and a trusted messenger for grass tops, a trusted partner for grass tops, but also then for the press to know that they can come to PA IPL, and then NEPA for there to be power built, like community power built around PA IPL as a leader for climate justice in Northeast PA. But the only way to do that is to be there, to talk to people, to reach out to them, to connect as best as possible.
You're mentioning power with, I guess, a small p, makes me want to ask whether you have been in touch with people at Power with a capital POWER, the interracial, interreligious, intercultural kind of federation of houses of worship with a very progressive outlook, and with very considerable building power, both in Philadelphia and in the suburbs.
Yeah, so we, in Pennsylvania, our other table partners are actually the League of Conservation Voters, Penn Environment, and Penn Future. But we have a relationship with Power, both pre-existing, and then also Amani Reed, our policy engagement manager, is actually now working for them as well. So she has a full-time position there and she works with us part-time. And I have a good relationship with both Bishop Royster and Julie Greenberg, and the former employee Nora El Marzocchi. I think that they have, like, for example, for the voter registration stuff, they're doing their own voter registration, so they're not going to do it for us. When it comes to the CAC work, I think that we could probably do better in trying to bring them into it. The only issue has been a little bit that sometimes the CAC turnaround is very quick. And unless you're already partnered on a project like those 3 groups I just mentioned, most groups, it's a little bit slower moving to try to get them to do things. So like those 3 that are at our table, they're also being partially funded. So they also have metrics, so we work together very easily. But for Power, it's more like asking them to do something that they weren't involved in. Even if it's good and on brand, similar mission, they may or may not have the bandwidth or capacity in that given week to do it. So unless we can give them forward notice of like a month, which is not very common for CAC, it's harder. But, you know, we still have several months left this year during this grant period. I hear you, Arthur. I will definitely make more overtures to try to integrate the work with them, because that is a fair thing to ask. Like, they have rabbis and pastors and priests, like, tap their network and get them to write some op-eds.
Right.
Yeah. Totally. I think the biggest thing that we're missing, as I said, is like, we need the on-the-ground person, like preferably somebody like Haley, you know, like a college student or a recent college grad who isn't looking for a full-time job. These are not full-time, but like 10 to 20 hours a week is what we're offering, and flexible schedules and autonomy and things like that. But as I said, it's just been a lot harder to capture the right person at the right time who can stay in the position long enough to like really build it out for what we need. I definitely think that's just a happenstance of where we are in the pandemic and the hiring market at the moment, unfortunately. And like I said, like, I know this across many, many, many other nonprofits who offering similar jobs, offering better paid full-time jobs. People just aren't getting that many applications. They aren't getting that many people taking the jobs. So, hey, Tim. See there? Got a nice hat on. Tim, you there? There you go. So any questions about any of those things that I laid out, or any ideas, thoughts about how to move forward?
David, on the DEP work, especially the first grant, I think Kelly School might be a good candidate if you're trying to add another location. So
Yeah.
Either later this week or beginning of next week, I can follow up with you on that.
And what neighborhood are they in?
They're in Germantown.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I don't know that school off the top of my head. Like, I can't even like picture it really.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of environmental work that Craig Johnson at Interpret Green has been doing with the Kelly School. So I think the Kelly School would be a very good candidate.
And this is the type of grant where like we can partner with any existing group. Like this is not meant to replace them. This is meant to supplement them. So like we reached out to Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake saying like, we know you are doing some environmental education in your communities, in the churches that are with you. Would you like us to come and offer a workshop or two? Like there's no predatory or like anything to do with this. It's just like, we are offering this for free. If you think you would like it, we are there to do it. We are available and interested. And it's at no expense at all. Like no one has to cost nothing for anybody. So.
And in terms of the Wissahickon, there's a very active nonprofit, Friends of FOW, Friends of the Wissahickon. And, I don't think they do much specific outreach to faith congregations specifically. I mean, they have a lot of volunteer members who do invasive species removal and planting and cleanup and trail maintenance and, all sorts of things. But, there might be opportunities there for partnering.
Yeah, I mean, if you can find a contact and get it to Kathy, that would be like, that's the only problem for these grants is like, I've been doing IPL and CAC and she's been doing DEP. So it's a little bit of a divide and conquer. Because like if we were to try to do Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, but do all 5 each of us, it would just drive ourselves crazy in terms of reporting and logistics and details and everything else.
Yeah.
Tim, you want to go teach some kids? I know that's a passion of yours.
Do I want to go feed who? My children?
Teach some kids.
Teach some kids. Oh, well, I do like to do presentations. But
there you go. We're doing them.
I have to confess that after COVID started, I started drifting away from learning a lot about the technical aspects of this stuff because I wasn't presenting it, and I went a couple of years without making any presentations at all.
Well, Kathy has a whole like training thing for you. She can train you into it and get you out on the field.
Oh, good. Who's that?
Kathy Habrowski, our outreach person, our development manager.
Oh, cool.
So she's managing that DEP grant, which is all environmental and watershed education in Germantown and Juniata Park. So maybe 25 to 40 minutes from your house, probably.
Yeah, well, Germantown is probably about a half hour.
Yeah.
Or even less.
Exactly.
If somebody could send me an email, that'd be great. I'd love to.
Yeah, I'll definitely have Kathy reach out.
You have my email address?
Yeah. I have everyone's email address.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I need to learn a lot more. There's a presentation or actually a discussion, more or less, that I'll be giving with a couple of other associates at Villanova on November 16th. That's a couple of months, and I'm trying to take care of that education problem over the next couple of months. And if you can help me out, I'd love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only other major announcement type of thing is the conference, which I don't have that many details on, but I imagine, Bill, do you have?
Well, I don't have a lot of details. The topic of this year's conference is environmental justice, and the date of the conference is Sunday, November, I want to say 13th. Am I right on that, David? Let me look at the calendar.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure myself.
Let me pull up my calendar.
And I think we're still looking for a Philadelphia location for it, right?
Yeah, I've had some discussions with Nathan, and yeah, we're going to be in several different locations. We're still working on whether it'll be 3 or 4, I think. Yeah, the date of the conference is November 13th. It'll be a half-day conference, Sunday afternoon. I think starting at 1:30 or 2, going till 5 or 5:30, something like that. And we
Gonna be
have,
where?
well, it will be, the keynote will be simulcast to all of our locations. One of our locations will be in Philadelphia. We're still working on our specific Philadelphia location. And then also in Pittsburgh and I believe Harrisburg, and also are we trying to do Northeast Pennsylvania as well, David?
I believe so, yeah. It's really a matter of securing the logistics and then like building out around it. But like last year we had intended to do an in-person hybrid like this, but then because of COVID numbers being particularly high, we went just virtual. So this year, COVID numbers are not quite as high. We're trying to do an in-person, like local wisdom, local speakers, local people, and then have that simulcast keynote. We
Yeah,
find
but-
that that's particularly potent because like there are big things that need to be addressed, but like mostly people want to deal with like what's happening in my area that I can impact and I can affect and I can get involved in. So
Yeah, I
but
think we have the keynote speaker, who I apologize, I don't have the person's name right now, but
Portlock.
She's a Pittsburgh area woman who's been working on environmental justice issues through most of her career. And then we will have local workshop. We'll have a couple of respondents to the keynote, which I think will also be online. And then we'll have 1 or 2, probably 2 afternoon workshops after the keynote, which will be local in each of the locations for the conference.
I just sent
Okay.
Haley, so that I'm on 2 different computers. I sent Haley a link to drop into the chat if you can, Haley, as well. So that's the page for the conference where you can see some details. It's Jolette Portlock, Executive Director of Sustainable Pittsburgh.
I'm sorry I'm late, by the way.
Oh, no problem. You emailed me. You said that you had a important Springfield meeting, right?
Yeah, but that wasn't why I was late on this event.
Oh, that was yesterday.
I got involved in reading and it just completely slipped out of my alleged brain.
That's the best reason to be late for a meeting, is to be lost in reading. I keep trying to get my 6-year-old to learn how to read so that he can like feel what it's like to
Yeah.
explore these other worlds and get lost in it.
Well, I've been reading all about climate change in the newspapers, so
Oh, that's a
I
different.
guess that's a good excuse. I want to, by the way, before we end, I want to issue a request. So
We are close
Yeah.
to wrapping up, Tim, so go ahead.
all right. Well, I have a sister in San Diego, and it's been a long time since I've seen her, and I'm planning to drive out there, but I don't like driving in freeways. I like the idea of going in back roads and going to little towns and whatnot. And it occurred to me, I mean, I would probably go north and then to go out there and then come circle around back with in the south. And I'd like to try to hit every state in the union eventually in my lifetime. But anyway, what what I was thinking about doing was somehow spreading the concern about climate change across the country in the course of that little journey. And I don't have any real strong ideas about how to go about doing that, but I could certainly distribute information, documents. I could try to put together an audience for a webinar or multiple webinars, or a school or something. I don't have any real specific concepts in my alleged brain, but I would like to get some feedback from you if anybody has any ideas about what I could do on that journey. It'd probably take me about, I don't know, a couple of months to get the whole trip done, because I would take it easy.
Especially if you're not on highways.
Yeah, I'm not going to go on freeways. I'm not going to go faster than, say, 40 miles an hour or something, 40 or 50.
Which also increases your visibility because like you're driving through towns.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. I want to see those little towns. I don't want to see the big cities so much. There's just something emotional about a little town that grabs me, and I don't know how to describe it. I can't really describe it very well, but it brings something out in me inside that makes me just feel like I'm part of it, and like these people are living really highly textural and meaningful lives. I walk along the streets of Philadelphia, and really all I get is mostly people not looking at me and avoiding me. I walk along the street of a town, like up in Ambler, for instance, and somebody pushing their carriage with a little baby in it, I could say to them, "Wow, you got a great army there," or something, and it's just a beautiful experience. And I want to do that. I'm 78 years old. I don't have a lot of time left. I want to get as much in as I possibly can.
In my little town in North Central PA, it was weird for me at first, but like everyone says hello and how are you on the streets and just like smiles at you.
Yeah.
And like
That's right.
random strangers, like
That's right. Well, I can walk along the path in Valley Green here in Philadelphia, and people will just give me big smiles, and we'll wave at each other, and it's just really fine. It's really nice.
yeah. And then Haley, do you live in Moscow? Is that your town, or is that Emily?
That's Emily. Right
Okay.
now I'm in Honesdale.
Yeah. I just found it funny that she lives in Moscow, which I imagine is probably about that big, but has a big name but a tiny village. Yeah.
Right
let
now
me
you
think-
live where?
Sorry.
I was asking her. She said something about where she lived.
Yeah, Hollingsdale, you said?
Honesdale, yeah.
Hollingsdale. She's
I don't know anything.
Yeah, it's beyond Scranton.
Yeah, about 40 minutes.
Let me think about it, Tim. I might have some ideas. I might even ask CAC if they could like figure out a way of advertising it, because that'd be cool to like get you interviewed also like in the Inquirer of like before and after you leave kind of thing, like
Oh, wow.
when you like get out on your trip, when you come back from your trip. I mean,
Yeah, that would be great.
sometimes
be
those types of trips catch national attention when like people go cross country and are like have something on your roof or something.
Yeah, I could jog maybe.
I think you should do it in an electric vehicle, so you're not adding to the
Yeah,
CO2.
I know I don't have one. I feel like a terrible hypocrite to be in this advocating, in this elimination of climate change, but I'm still driving a fossil fuel powered car.
Yeah, as am I.
Okay, well that makes me feel better.
You're not alone in that. Yeah, I've been trying to push my wife to let us get an electric vehicle, at least for like all our local driving. It doesn't make sense to have a fossil fuel one, but like sometimes I drive like 300 miles. That's a little hard, but
Yeah. Well, I've been trying to get my wife to go across country with me, and sometimes she's more or less inclined, and then sometimes she just thinks, "Oh my God, 2 months on the road, I can't stand it." So I just
Like-
want to get over to see my sister. That's my main thing, but I don't want to do it with, you know, just watching trees flash by on the freeway.
Yeah.
I want to get in there and see people and meet people and talk to people and be in the thick of it all the way across.
Maybe you can do a cross-country IPL tour. We have 46 of them. So
Okay. We'll talk about that. How's it? You know, one time, David, you mentioned something about wanting to come down to Philadelphia and you needed help. And I was ready to put you in our house to.
my parents live there. Also, I have a house now there. So yeah, but I appreciate
Oh,
it.
okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Several years ago, there was a man and his girlfriend or wife, I'm not sure which. I think he was a grad student at UC San Diego or one of the West Coast schools.
Mhm.
And he did a national climate change tour and took
Wow.
like 4 months going all around the country. I heard him speak out at Westchester University. But, you know, he had people locally who were helping arrange the logistics to set up the talk opportunities. So I think, you know, you would really, you know, you can't just show up in a town and say, oh, I want to give a talk about climate change.
Right.
Sort of have
Right.
to have had, you have to have someone doing the groundwork ahead of time to get you those, you know, engagements or those dates.
Yeah, there's probably about 1,000 little towns across the country to
No,
stop it.
I do think that the IPL tour would not be terrible because like you most of the states would have an IPL.
Yeah.
You could
Okay.
literally go to their towns and they could set something up for you in advance. It's not a terrible idea.
Not a terrible idea at all.
You get to go to dinner with 46 different groups of people.
I mean, there
As
you're,
long as they pay for it, I'm all right.
you're preaching to the choir though, in a,
No, I meant that they would set up the local logistics is what I'm saying. What you were
Yeah.
talking about, like having it
Yeah.
ready for him to show up so that he can be there and then do a presentation or do some visibility or do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had no idea that my question or my request would do such a massive result, but I'm
Yeah.
glad that you guys are ready to dive in with me.
Bill and I think big.
If it's Tuesday, it must be Iowa.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate all of you staying on. I will send a follow-up email at some point that like summarizes a little bit. And like I said, if you have people that could be involved, if you have congregations, if you have ideas, like just respond to that or just share these links. Haley, could you drop that in the chat again? Share these links out to people. And like I said, every time that somebody downloads the voter pledge, it counts. Every time somebody registers to vote with that link, it counts, all of those types of things. So would greatly appreciate your assistance with that and getting the word out to every and any congregation or faith community that you can think of.